Saidi, thank you so much for your time today. It's always exciting to speak with people doing Pixar Spark Shorts because I feel like you get to learn so much about them. So let's
Yeah.
start a little bit about telling me about your short self.
Yeah, self is short for self-sabotage. And for me, it was kind of like the story of me struggling to belong. That was kind of like the first inspiration. The second inspiration was also just like my mother's immigrant story of her immigrating to America and like escaping a civil war in Ethiopia, and how like she was kind of forced to assimilate, learn how to speak English in order to kind of just like in general, like belong in this, in the United States. Um, and I kind of wanted to tell the story in like immigrant and African experience because I feel like you just don't see that in animation ever. So that's something that I really pay attention to when I was making the film.
Yeah, because it's a definitely whole different circumstance. Because I mean, I have my family who emigrated from Mexico, El Salvador, but you have a really large community, especially here in California.
Yeah.
It has to be a very different situation for those immigrating from like Africa. Tell me, how does this program give you an opportunity to really to voice your experience?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about the Sparks program and the kind of opportunities they give you, not only to like make a short film, but also to have no executive oversight, no one telling me like this is the story you have to make or this is the direction you have to go. It was more of just like, here's this money, here are these resources. Let's see what you can do in this time period of the story personal for you. You create your own brain trust, and also, it's your story and your voice and how you want to share the story to the world. So that was kind of like it was nice. It's just like freedom, and that's something that I really crave as someone who likes to tell like more darker, like more a little out there kind of stories, that having more freedom to kind of share it, especially in the stop motion medium. So I'm very thankful, and I love the program.
What was it? What was it like for you day one? You find out you're going to be able to make this film. Where do you begin? Because I mean, I can't imagine how excited you'd be. This is really the foundation to probably way bigger things for you in the future.
Yeah, the first thing I did honestly was kind of build like a community and people around me. So like the first thing I did was talk to like the SparkShorts directors, the one who previously have done it, asking what their experience was like and like what kind of advice they would give me. That was the first thing I did. The second thing I did was also just like I kind of hid away to write my film and story because I needed kind of just like alone time to kind of process. I already knew that the story I wanted to make was about a woman who self sabotaged herself to belong, but I didn't know what. I didn't know how. I just knew that stop motion was the key for it. And those are kind of like the two big things, like building a community, but also hiding a way to write, which are weirdly like polar opposites of each other.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be a balance, and it seems like you found a really good one. I want to talk about the
Yeah.
textures that we see in your film. We see the wood versus the metal, and then also the textures and the sound of the wood, sound of the metal.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your process in making sure that these were very separate, but at the same time they can also coexist.
Yeah, I feel like that was the most collaborative process of making this film. Like even though the story is like so personal to me, so many people touched this film and helped like elevate it even more. And the biggest thing too, going back to what I was saying before about the stop motion was, we knew we wanted this to be a stop motion puppet. We knew we wanted her to be wood, but we knew we didn't have necessarily the skill sets to kind of do this kind of medium internally in the studio. So the first thing we did was actually outreach to Tippett Studios, who also is in the Bay Area, there in Berkeley, and kind of just like, it was at first like, let's do a tour, let's have lunch, let's talk. And slowly it became this thing of like, let's do this. Are you guys down? And for me, it was important to kind of have her be wood because I knew I wanted, because she's from Africa, I wanted something half crafted, earthy, something made out of natural materials. And there's something about going to an urban city or like the United States or LA, for example, where like things are a little like fake, plastic, shiny, everything looks good, but when you look deeper into it, it's not really like that. And as someone who was like raised in LA my whole life, I feel like okay saying that because even for me, when I was like raised in the east side of LA, but when I moved to the west side to go to UCLA, there was such a huge culture shock to me. I was just like, who are these people? And have they been here this whole time? Because they have not been in my little bubble. I was in the immigrant part of East LA. Like didn't see or like talk to people like this before. And I really want to like take those experiences and put that on with like the puppet. So like if you see her closely, she has like tattoo markings on her chest. It's like a cross. There's like three little like marks on her neck, and there's also like two 11s to represent that she's from the Tigray region of Ethiopia, versus like the other characters in the film, which we call them goldies because they look like gold people. They're kind of mimicked by like Barbie dolls. They're like perfect, they're like slim, they're shiny, they're like immediately your eyes are attracted to them. So it's really important to show those opposite. And it's at another layer is that we want both of them to be animated differently. So that's where the stop motion really comes in, where like she's like moves imperfectly and like kind of pops, but there's still like a gracefulness and perfect like imperfectionist aspect of the way that she moves. That's still kind of like, oh, this is still like really like fun to watch. Like even though it's not perfect, she's still beautiful to watch. Versus the CG models of Barbies in that sense, they're more like silk and clean. Like they're on ones. Like there is no popping whatsoever. And then going again with the sound design, that was probably the most collaborative process where like I just knew that I wanted the sounds to be different, and to me that kind of represents like language and how like my mom, she had to like she was basically forced to learn how to speak English in order to kind of like find a job and like even going to the grocery store, just talking to people. And I kind of wanted her to have that experience of like, she can't communicate like them. And she also just can't because she doesn't have the material and that sound that comes out of her. So like what we did was basically pull out a keyboard and my, God bless Sam, he just one note at a time was like, how about this? How about this? And I was like, I don't know, yes, no. And like slowly it kind of created like this like vocabulary of like, oh, higher pitches, because that's something that's attractive and like makes you lean forward. And that's something where like self, when she hears these things, there's something like, ooh, like something nice. Again, going with like that shiny feeling kind of aesthetic. So yeah, a lot of layers on this of like struggling to belong.
Very, very last question I have for you. The very visceral scene and my favorite moment of this is when she finds the first hand, and it's really dark, and she can't necessarily fit it. But I mean, there's so much thought and so many details in just those few seconds. You know, what was it in that moment really that in creating that moment?
Yeah, I really wanted to show her making a choice, and I really wanted it to feel like it hurt too. Because another aspect of this is that whenever I try to fit in, I'll play this like mental game in my head of like how much of myself can I hide in order to like completely fit in. And then when I do that, I kind of lose myself in the process. And like I don't realize that I'm doing this until it's already too late. And that's kind of like this moment right here where like she's about to make like a big choice where like in her mind is like this is it, this is going to have how makes me belong, but at the same time she doesn't realize the consequences of these actions. And I also want the audience, my favorite kind of films are when you're like struggling to root for audience for a protagonist wants. So for us it's just like, oh, we want her to fit in, we want her to feel like she belongs, at the same time not in this way. And like the way that you could just see how her struggle and even her thinking of getting there was something I really wanted to spend time with too. So yeah, it was a lot of sound design. The sound design of it too was also something really delicately planned out to make sure the score doesn't like overtake the sound effects of the hand, and then vice versa. Wanting the score to rise up when we see her be lighted and mesmerized by the golden hand too.
It was really well done. I know I gasped a little bit. I was like, oh no, like I want you to be, like you said, I want you to be happy. But I don't I don't know if this is the path I want you to take. So very well done. Sarai, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate being
Thank you, Manny.
and getting to know you, getting to know your film, and I look forward to see what other things you get into in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate talking to you.
All right, take care.
Bye.